Hi guys, we're going to go through the notes together for lesson 8.1, the Pythagorean Theorem. So make sure you have your notes out, something to write with, and let's get to it. So most of you probably already know the Pythagorean Theorem, and you probably know it as a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So a and b, they reference these two sides, and these are your legs. So you take your two short sides and you square them, and it's equal to the long side, which is your hypotenuse, and then you square that. So let's fill in the blanks. It says a triangle is a right triangle if and only if, so this is a biconditional statement, the hypotenuse of the triangle is equal to the sum of the square of the legs. Okay, so now you use Pythagorean to help you find a missing side. You have to know two sides in order to use it. Now, I know that you guys know the 30-60-90 rule and the 45-45-90 rule. This works when it's those angles or any angle, these two, as long as this one is 90. So if you forget the 30-60-90 rule, as long as you have two sides, you can still use the Pythagorean theorem. Now, what if this isn't a right angle? And you can tell that just by the angle, or I'm sorry, by the side measures. Now, I would have to give you all the side measures for you to determine this, but we're going to do this later on the assignment and in the notes. So let's go ahead and fill in the blanks. It says if the square of the length of the longest side of the triangle is greater than the sum of the squares of the lengths of the other two sides, then the triangle is obtuse. Okay, so we're going to write some information over here. So when you do this, I square the two shorter sides, and I put a box, and then I square the longer side. And then if the two shorter sides end up being a bigger number, then this tells me this is acute. Now, what happens if you do the same exact thing, but this time well, it's not really the hypotenuse, but the longer side is bigger. So it goes this way. So if the longer side's bigger, that means it is obtuse. So we're going to get a chance to practice that in just a second. So first, we're just going to go back and do Pythagorean theorem. And you've done this before. We're going to find this missing side. I usually start with the hypotenuse. So I find my right angle, and I go straight across, and I say, this is my hypotenuse. So let's mark that. Now, I could use x. Technically, if I'm using the equation, I could use c, but I often just say x because it's unknown. So my hypotenuse squared is equal to 4 squared plus 8 squared. Okay, so hopefully you have a calculator. You get 80. Now, if you have one of these yellow calculators, it will do the square root of 80 for you, and it will simplify it for you. Now, not having a calculator, as you know, is not a valid excuse for not simplifying your square root, because you guys know how to do this. So we're going to take 80 and go any two numbers that multiply to give you 80. 2 and 4, 2 and 5, 2 and 2. So you have two 2's, and a 5. All right, so this 2 comes out, this 2 comes out, and this 5 stays in. So if I multiply these two 2's back together, I get 2 root 5, which is exactly what I already knew it was. It's 4 root 5. Okay, so if you don't have a calculator, do it by hand, because again, you need to know the skill. Now, moving forward, look at this one. Where's the hypotenuse? It's not always the unknown side. This time, my hypotenuse is given to you, so it's 10. So again, I always start with the hypotenuse, get that out of the way, put it by itself, and make it equal to the other two sides squared. Now, we're going to have to subtract that 36 over. So grab your calculator, 100 minus 36, 64. And you may already know this. The square root of 64 is 8. Okay, so x squared is 64. I have to square root both sides, so x is 8. Okay, next one. Where's my hypotenuse? It's here. So let's square. 3 root 5 squared equals 3 squared plus x squared. And then you probably look at this and you go, eek. Okay, so really this is 3 root 5 times 3 root 5. You can do this without a calculator. You really can't. 3 times 3 is 9. Root 5 times root 5 is root 25. So what's the square root of 25? Hopefully you're saying 5. So what's 9 times 5? 45. Okay. Now, if you wanted to use a calculator, you type it in exactly, put your parenthesis, 3 square root 5. Now notice I'm pushing over to get outside the parenthesis, or getting outside my radical sign, parenthesis, and square. And I get 45. Equals 9 plus x squared. So subtract the 9. And so hopefully you know the square root of 36, and if you don't, there it is, 6. So x squared equals 36. X is 6. Now when you look at this one, you might realize that you already know how to do this one. This is isosceles. And you know a trick for when it's an isosceles right triangle. Do you guys remember it? If 2 equal sides here, that means you have 2 equal angles. So this is a 45, 45, 90. So you're going to multiply by something. Does anyone remember? Okay, let's do it the long way. X squared, that's my hypotenuse because it's opposite the 90, equals 7 squared plus 7 squared. So that's 49 plus 49. Okay. So 49 plus 49 is 98. And the square root of 98, for time's sake, I'm just going to type it in. I get 7 root 2. So x is 7 root 2. Okay, so does this sound familiar, guys? When you have 2 distinct different angles, you're going to times by root 2. And then that's why you get 7 root 2 here. Okay. Now, on this next section, we're going to first read the directions. It says the length of the sides of the triangle are given. Classify them as acute, right, or obtuse, or not a possible triangle. Okay, so there's a lot of things going on here. First of all, we need to know if you can even make a triangle with it. And that's a skill from first semester. And that is, take the 2 shorter sides and make sure it's bigger than the longest side. So for instance, is this a triangle? So a 7 plus 9, is that greater than 10? And yes, 16 is greater than 10. So yes, this is a triangle. Let's go ahead and do it for all of them. Just get that out of the way. Now, you might look at this and go, I have no idea what that is. It's okay, let's figure it out. 3 square root of 2. You know, it can not helpful. So push this button here, and it turns it to a decimal. So it's 4 root 2, or I'm sorry, 4.2. So now you know which sides are the longest or the shortest. So let's add these two together. Is that greater than 4.2? And yes. Next one. Is 8 and 10, the two shorter sides, greater than the long side? And hopefully you guys are saying it's not. So, no. Is this a triangle? This is not a triangle because it doesn't work. So it's not acute, it's not obtuse, it's not right because it's not even a triangle. Because if you try to draw, if this is 20, let's say this is 10 and this is 8, like the sides just aren't long enough to touch. It doesn't work. Okay, so let's do the other ones now that you guys get the hang of it. Take the two smaller sides, 18 and 16. Is that greater than 32? Well, when I add those together, I get 34. So does it work? Yes. And then when you look at this, well, what's 10 root 2? 10, I don't know if you guys can see it. 10 square root of 2, that's 14.1. So let's take the two shorter sides. Is that greater than 14.1? And it is. Okay, so now we're going to go up and we're going to use this. If the hypotenuse, or the longest side, is so big, it beats out the other two sides, it's obtuse. Because this side is so big, one side wins, it's obtuse. Really, if you think about it, if this side is so big, across from it means this angle is so big. So that makes sense, that's obtuse. Now, up here, if these two sides are bigger, that just means that this angle is smaller, so it's acute. All right, so let's practice this. So it's going to look very similar to up here, except for you're going to square them. I don't know what goes in the box yet. So 49, 81, and 100. So which side is bigger? Those are bigger. So what does it mean? Is the biggest side bigger, or is the two smaller sides bigger? Well, here the two smaller sides are bigger. So what does that mean? Let's go back up here and look. So the two smaller sides are bigger, that means it is acute. So we're going to say this guy is acute. All right, moving on. Now this is the biggest side. So we're going to go 3 squared plus 4 squared and 3 root 2 squared. So 9 and 16. Now this here, again, you can do it by hand. You can do it on your calculator. For time's sake, let's do it on the calculator. Again, I have to push over so the square root symbol will stop. Then I square it. I get 18. Great, guys. Which side is bigger here? Pretty obvious. The two smaller sides add up to be a bigger number than the longer side. So again, this is acute. We already know this one's not a triangle. Okay, let's try this one. 18 squared plus 16 squared. We don't know what that is. And 32. Okay, so let's use the calculator to help us. 18 squared plus 16 squared. It's 580. 32 square is 1024. All right, so now you guys see that this one side beats out the other two sides. So this side is really big. Let's go back up here and look. This one side up here is so big, it beats out those. So if this side's big, across from it means this angle's big. So that means it has to be obtuse. All right. E. You know, that's your longest side. So 10 squared, 10 squared. We don't know what goes here yet. 10 root 2. So 10 squared is 100. We know that. So what is 10 square root of 2? Ooh, messed up. Draw that again. Parenthesis. 10 square root of 2. Arrow over. Parenthesis squared. 200. Oh, look. You get the same on both sides. So what does it mean when they're equal? When they're equal, that means it is a right triangle. Ta-da! Okay, so these are all your choices. You can have acute, you can have obtuse, you can have right, or it could just not work at all. A square has a length, okay, next page, guys. The square has a length of 9. Okay, so let's sketch. That's a pretty bad square. Just sketch one. Now its diagonal length. Okay, so each side here is 9, and they want you to find this length here. Now we know all these angles are right angles, so can you find this diagonal? And again, we did this with the 30, 60, 90, 45, 45, 90. You know that two sides are the same, two angles are the same. So really, you guys should be really, really good at this and quick. So you take 9 and you times it by root 2. Okay, so we know the answer. Let's try that again. X equals 9 root 2. If you want to do Pythagorean the long way, you can. But the answer is 9 root 2 because you guys already know that lesson. Now this one, we can't do that awesome trick. We're going to buy a TV. Now this is something you may not know. When you buy a TV, it's measured by its diagonal length. So if the TV is 48 inches, they're talking about that length there. And hopefully your TV has right angles in the corners. Now it's 42 inches wide. So how tall is the screen? Guys, it's just a Pythagorean problem. We don't know this angle or this angle, so we don't know if it's 30, 60, 90.